and enjoy that experience, because shortly after he was stricken with a fatal form of cancer.
Yeah.
And he was literally dragged up on the stage at the ESPN ESPY Awards, which just occurred about 2 weeks ago, and they had another touching moment there. And he really, within a week or two before he died, he gave a speech which I think for any writer is burned into my heart and soul and memory. He said, if each of us can do 3 things every day, if possible, my God, how wonderful we would get on with the business and the joy of living. He said, if we could laugh every day, really a good belly laugh. There's nothing that separates us from any other member of the animal kingdom, maybe except for the hyena, to, to laugh a good belly laugh. That's what makes us human, the ability to laugh. But then he said something very interesting. He said, if we could cry every day. And I thought that was very interesting but strange. And then I realized, he said, if we're not afraid to show our emotions, to really express our emotions, bring them to the fore, don't keep them buried and hidden. He said, that'll be wonderful. And then he said, if we could think every day, but not think about what we're going to eat, what we're going to wear. Think about something important. How can I make this world a little better place to live in? How can I leave it a little better than I found it? And if you could laugh, cry, and think, he said, why, you have lived a glorious life, then that could be beyond the expectation of anyone could imagine. And he died 2 weeks later. But I always remember, and in my writing, I've written four novels, as you know. I try to keep that in mind. I want my reader to laugh through some lame humor. You must admit, you've heard me many times. To think and to show emotion. I found that in your novel.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, I was just listening to you and thinking to myself, that's what authors do. A book captures people if it makes them think, makes them laugh, and makes them cry. I mean, crying to me that's the connection you make with someone else's life, someone else's emotions and problems. You may relate it back to yourself, you may be crying for yourself, and you may be crying for them. But crying is really, it's to me a very important human emotion. And every time I read this book, I cry at the end, because I brought in, the dedication in this book is to my muses, and it's Angie, Connie, Maxine, and Edie. Okay, and these are real people, and I put them in the book. They're the flying ladies. At the very end of the book, Annie gets to meet 4 of the women who knew her great-grandmother. And again, it's a ghost story about great-grandma, and the ghost appears and disappears. So Angie was my mother. Connie was my older cousin role model, favorite cousin. Edie was my brother's good wife, and Maxine was my dad's girlfriend the last 10 years of his life. And these were wonderful women from the 40s. They were like this in the 40s, and they were definitely an inspiration for me to go back and write about women in the 40s. And I hope I captured it, and I hope that what happens in this story is that the girls who read it understand something about the journey women have taken.
Yes, and still continue to take.
In fact, Annie says, Annie is in the ancestral home in the attic, looking through trunks, trying to find research information about her great-grandmother, and she finds a picture similar to this, and she says, they're all smiling. It's war, Mom. Mom, it's war. They're all smiling. Why? Why do they look so happy? And her mother, you know, explains what they're doing. And she says they're happy because they're doing a job that's important. They feel like they're part of the effort, and that's why they're happy.
Something greater than themselves.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the elements of any novel, I mean, you know, the plot, the setting, and the characters are the 3 major components of any novel. And the plot is really developed. I mean, you start out, and it builds to a climax very effectively. It's a story that is well worth telling and well worth reading about, and it stays with you. The setting, as you've already described, Linda, for principally the areas that you know best, New Windsor, Maryland. I mean, you know, your son lives in there.
My son lives there.
I suspect that. Fire Island, you're very familiar with Fire Island. And then, of course, Long Island. You talked about Republic Airfield and Republic Aircraft. You talk about Old Bethpage. And you know, and Mitchell Field, which is now Roosevelt Field, which is a big shopping area, where how important air travel was to early days. I mean, you know, how Charles Lindbergh took off from Mitchell Field on the first nonstop flight across the Atlantic. So the settings are very compelling, I find, as well. And the characters, to me, that's so important, because I agree with you that if you develop characters that the reader can flesh them out and relate to and identify with and say, hey, I can relate to that. That's like me. I think that's when the book will linger on long after the final page is turned.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's when people will say, you know, this book will stay with me for a while because that character is me, or someone like me, or someone like I know and love and respect and honor. And I think that is very, very, very important. The point of view I notice is that you write in the first person. Now, you know, like, and very famous Nelson DeMille, for example, most of, if not all of his novels are in the first person. I write in the third person. Why did you choose the first person rather than the third person?
Simply because I wanted it to be from a young girl's point of view, and also it makes it very easy to introduce humor. She has a kind of quirky outlook on life, yeah, and she sees things pretty much as a teenager. Also, when you talk about characters, for me, setting is a character. I develop, setting is really what inspires me. I mean, I told you, I got into the plane, and that's and the same thing, I knew all about Fire Island, and it was all, setting to me is like a character. You develop it so that people really almost feel like they're there. And Annie, I tried to create a role model for girls, and more important than that, her boyfriend, Tyler Egan, is the perfect boyfriend, okay? He's respectful, he's her friend, he includes her in all of his adventures, and he loves her. And it's very sweet.
I notice he drives a RAV4.
Yes.
The reason I mentioned that is because I know that's what you have.
Yes, I know. I wonder if I'll get a kickback from Toyota on that. No, I doubt it. I doubt it. Well, at least it wasn't a red Mustang.
No. But I noticed that a third person characterization of a novel, the author is like a god. Because in the third person, you know what every single character is thinking and feeling.
But you have to show it. You
have to show it.
You can't guess what's in the.
No, you have to.
It's called
show
head
it.
hopping.
Yeah.
That's another reason why I did first person. No,
the names of the characters are very, like as you just described, the four people that you have dedicated to are people that you know and love. And I've always found that to be something that I didn't want to lose Joe Jones and Tom Smith and so on. And I remember. J.D. Salinger, when he wrote the classic novel, I guess that we all read when our generation, Catcher in the Rye, he couldn't think of his main character's name. And he was walking in Buffalo, New York, and came across the marquee of a theater. The movie, 1947, was being shown, called Dear Ruth, a World War II simply fine story. And the two major stars of that was William Holden and Joan Caulfield. And he saw Holden and Caulfield horizontally connected to each other. He said, I got my name, Holden Caulfield.
So he's the person who started the trend of everybody having two last names.
That's right. Could very,
Thank you for
well,
letting me know.
I like your characters. I like everything about the book, and I would
you.
strongly recommend as a great read for young people and, like me, almost an adult.
Well, I always say, it's for the young at heart. It's for the young at heart. And yeah, I enjoyed writing it.
Good. Very good. Good job. Keep up the good work, because you have a hint of what's to come in the future as you tell that Annie's going off to college and something's going to happen in Vermont in that part of.
Yes, at the end of the book, and I won't tell you what happens at the end because it's very sweet.
Okay, don't tell us, because I don't think you can, because I think the program has just ended.
That's it.